What's up, guys? So I'm sure many of you have at least heard of this game called Brawlhalla. It's a free platform fighter where you damage opponents with different attacks until they're eventually knocked into the blast zone 3 times, and you win. It's a very similar idea to Smash, but it's definitely got its own charm to it. Anyways, this game's fun as hell, and over the past 6 or so years of my life, I've gotten pretty good at it. Everyone has that one game they just constantly return to when they're bored, and for me, Brawlhalla is that game. There's so many different characters and things to learn that just never gets old to me. But what if we took that same diversity and skill expression that makes Brawlhalla so great and just threw it out the window? Today, I want to try and challenge myself to reach Diamond, the top 1 percentile of players, using just one move. So, without further ado, let's get started. Obviously, before I can hop into a game here, I first have to actually find the move I'm going to spam. In Brawlhalla, there are a total of 504 unique attacks, 384 signatures, and 120 light attacks. Now at first glance this seems a little intimidating, but really it's not that bad. Right off the bat, all 384 of those signatures I just mentioned can be crossed off. Signatures, which I'll be calling SIGs for the rest of this video, are the extremely powerful, heavy-hitting moves in this game. Each of the 64 characters have 2 weapons and 3 SIGs per weapon, so 6 total. Neutral, or End SIG, Side SIG, and Down SIG. These moves are super useful in regular gameplay for killing and stuff, but for a challenge like this, they're trash. As a trade-off for being so powerful, SIGs are slow as hell and predictable, and if I'm only going to be using one move for an entire game, those are probably the 2 worst possible qualities I could ever have. So, that brings us down to the 120 light attacks, and once again, there are quite a few I can eliminate right off the bat. Every weapon in this game has its own unique set of 8 options it can perform. The 3 grounded attacks, neutral light, side light, and down light, the 3 light aerial attacks, neutral air, side air, and down air, and the 2 heavy aerial attacks, recovery and ground pound. Just like with the SIGs, every recovery and ground pound can be eliminated. These moves are too slow, and the angles they send at are generally not ideal for this challenge. Similarly, every neutral air and down air can also be eliminated. In this challenge, I'm mainly looking for moves that send to the side. It's going to be extremely hard to kill anyone by bashing their heads into the stage over and over, or doing some weird shit like this. As for the grounded light attacks, side light and down light can also be eliminated. Most side lights and down lights in this game are just setups. They're meant to build damage and lead to other moves that can potentially kill. Obviously, being that I can only use one move, these moves are out of the question. And just like that, my options have been narrowed down to 30 moves, the neutral lights and the side airs. Now, I think I've done enough explaining here for y'all to understand what I'm looking for. Take out every move that retains any of the same problems I just mentioned, take out the shit moves with tiny hitboxes, and I'm left with 2 prime options: hammer side air and sword neutral light. Really, either one of these has the potential to reach Diamond, but after some brief testing, I've decided the move I want to spam to Diamond with is sword end light. So, let's just jump into the first game. Yeah, as you probably could have guessed, these first few placement matches were not very difficult. I mean, I hate to be the guy smurfing down to a lower rank and clapping noobs, but that's just the way it's gotta be for these first few matches. So, to add a little more purpose into my actions here, I figured alongside a small description of what I'm doing and thinking about here, I could also take the time to give some advice for each different rank. My own 2 cents on what kind of mistakes these guys were making, and how you can improve if you find yourself in these ranks. The fact of the matter is, statistically, the majority of people who end up watching this video are in or would fall in these silver to plat level ranks, so hopefully some of this advice will help you out. Don't be mistaken though, I will still make fun of these people, because god damn, some of these guys are ass. Without further ado though, let's get started here in silver. Alright, so starting with silver, I mean, there's only so much I can say here. There's not really much technique involved in spamming one move, and the guys I'm playing against, well, they don't really know how to play. I'll talk more about my strategy and thought process once the players start to get a little better, but for the silvers, I think I'll mostly just stick to what they can do to improve. Starting with some general advice, if you're in silver and you want to improve, you just need to learn how the game works. Play a couple different characters, find some weapons you think are cool, learn how to dash, learn how to dodge, learn how many jumps you have, etc. Training mode is especially helpful for this because you can practice any character you want and just learn what they do and what their weapons do. But yeah man, there's no secret sauce here. If you want to get better at the game, you need to know how the game works in the first place. Which is a perfect segue into the snake eyes I faced in my third placement match. This guy has no idea how the game works. He is what people call a sig spammer. I could go on and on about sig spamming and how to counter and stuff, but it all comes down to one thing: whiffs and punishes. As we discussed before, while sigs are the strongest moves in this game when they land, they're also the slowest, which means when this dude whiffs, it's a lot easier for me to get behind him and hit him than if he had just used a regular light attack. For new players, this takes some getting used to, but I'd say around gold level, people start to get it down. So, tips for this guy: bro, just use more light attacks. Moving on, also in silver is this Hattori. You notice any patterns about how this guy is playing? Bots in this game will face someone like this and be like, "Oh my fucking god, this shit is so fucking impossible to react to! I fucking hate this game on it, it's dying! Fuck the devs, fuck you, fuck everything, fuck! Fuck you!" Yo, chill. This is the same thing as with the snake eyes. Just let him whiff. It's gonna be a little trickier to punish because this guy's actually using some light attacks as well, but he's still whiffing right in front of my face, so come on, it's not that hard. As for what the Hattori can do, she just needs to be more calculated in when she uses her attacks. You don't always gotta be pressing buttons. But yeah man, believe it or not, that's about all I have to say about silver. At the end of the day, these guys are probably just random new players experimenting with the game. None of them really pose a challenge at all, and there's not much constructive advice I can give besides just play the game more and have fun. Where I do think I can get more into that kind of stuff is with the golds. Once again, I think it goes without saying that these matches were not that hard, but I did start to pick up a few notable techniques around this rank. One effective strat I was having fun with was the double chase dodge. If you don't know, every time you land a hit in this game, you can hit your dodge button afterwards to do what's called a chase dodge. If you're grounded, you can do 2 in a row. As the name implies, it gives you invincibility and allows you to chase your opponent down, which I abused the hell out of. Honestly, movement in general was by far the biggest thing separating me from these guys. I mean, I was just hitting some clean ass moves on these guys. Going off stage, gravity canceling. Like, check out this move against this Artemis. That shit was cold. Enough of that though, movement was a big advantage for me, but there were also a lot of classic mistakes these guys were making that are pretty easy to point out. Take this same Artemis for instance. For the most part, this guy was genuinely not that bad. His approaches, however, were ass. He kept jumping in the air and predictably down airing on both Scythe and Lance. He'd get me a few times, but mostly they were just free punishes. This is actually a big reason why I chose Sword and Light over Hammer Side Air in the beginning of the video. Approaching with aerial attacks is risky. Grounded attacks are way quicker and less predictable, so if you're someone who plays like this guy, I would consider using more side lights and end lights to approach. Nevertheless, this Artemis ended up being my last placement match, and after going 9-1, I killed myself like a dumbass against this Loki. I landed myself at 16-21, only 4 games away from Plat. These games leading up to Plat were all the same as my placement matches. A couple cool clips here and there, like this one against this Tesca. Kinda cooked his ass here, but yeah, all the same. So I think I'll just go over the obvious mistakes each of these 4 players were making, give some general advice for golds, and then I'll move on to Plat. Beginning with this Val, this guy was just a little too feisty. His movement was genuinely good, his dodging looked pretty good, but he just threw out too many moves. He'd approach with weird things like down air, which were all easy to punish, but more noticeably, he did some pretty stupid gravity cancels. Gravity cancels, or GCs, are an essential mechanic of this game. If you dodge and perform a grounded attack in the air at the same time, you'll do the grounded attack in the air. Super useful, especially in a challenge like this where I can only use grounded attacks, but it also uses up a dodge, which makes you extremely vulnerable to a punish if you miss. That's what this guy was doing. He was whiffing extremely bad GCs on the edge, and getting punished for it. That's my main critique of him, but overall, he was genuinely not that bad. And you know I'm being serious because of what I'm about to say to the Scarlet. What the hell is this stance, bro? Even if you don't know the game, who puts that on and thinks it looks good? Allow me to explain. Stances let you swap 1 point of one stat and put it into another. Honestly, I don't want to get too sidetracked talking about stats, so I'll just mention 3 quick pointers that generally apply to everything. Number 1, stats do matter. If you play a 3 defense legend and then play Magyar, you'll notice a clear difference in survivability. Number 2, dexterity, or the second stat listed under a character, is the worst stat in the game by far. Not completely useless, but the large majority of the time, you should never use dex stance. And number 3, speed is very important. When you're lower level, you don't really notice it, but as you get better, 5 speed is probably the bare minimum you ever want to drop down to. This is actually why I swapped to Bodvar instead of Sir Roland, because going from 4 to 5 speed does genuinely make a big difference. Anyways, as for how this guy actually played, he wasn't bad at all. This was actually one of the closest matches so far. Caught me lacking a few times with some SIGs, cooked me towards the end and almost clutched up, but in the end, this guy just had bad approaches. Kept down airing into the ground, whiffed easy punishes on me, and did more stupid GCs. Best advice I can give to this guy though, bro, hop off that stance and don't turn back. Just use speed stance for Scarlet, it is way better. Moving on, the third match here was against Teska, and I don't really have a ton to say here. He kinda got clapped the first 2 stocks, and on his last stock, I think he got a little flustered and just started 6 spamming his ass off. Not the best of ideas, but I also understand it. I did accidentally hit this guy with a recovery this game though, so I'll just take this moment to discuss the main rule I came up with as I played. Whenever I accidentally hit someone with an attack that isn't Sword Endlight, I have to let them hit me before I can attack them again. This has happened in a bunch of games already, but I just figured now would be a good time to mention it. Anyway, so, tips for this Teska: stop waking up so much, use downlight a little less on boots, and 6 spamming as a last resort has never worked in the history of Brawlhalla. Lastly, we got this Artemis, and I'm gonna make it quick here. This guy's mistakes were pretty obvious. Let's play a little game here. Just watch this short clip and see if you can find the 3 things I think this guy did wrong here. You can just tell when this guy's winding up to go for a side air approach. I loves approaching with side air. Should have reversed that. Nice, cause recovery, maybe. Nice. We good? Alright. Number 1, the side airs. Side air is a great approach option on Lance especially. Still not perfect, you should use grounded options as well, but all of Lance's aerials can be pretty solid for approaches. This guy, however, was just way too telegraphed in when he was gonna side air. He'd float in the air for a full second, and just before hitting the ground, he'd side air every time. Super easy to predict. Number 2, he'd mash Lance recovery the moment he was sent off stage. Lance recovery is dog shit. It is one of the worst recoveries in the game for actually coming back to stage. You literally do not move as it's charging, and once you release it, you're launched in a super predictable path. This is something I was able to punish with ease, and it's something I punished with ease throughout the entire climb to Diamond. And finally, number 3, he threw his weapon for no reason when he was coming back to stage. On Lance, Gauntlets, and Cannon, you can use side air to propel yourself forward and make it easier to return to stage. Instead, this guy just threw his shit away, which accomplished nothing by the way, and killed himself. So, 3 tips for you Lance players in gold. 1, don't spam only side air to approach. If you're gonna spam side air, at least try to learn how to dash jump fastfall side air to make yourself harder to react to. 2, be more cautious with your recovery off stage. Don't use it the moment you get off stage. This goes for all weapons, but it's especially important with shitty ass Lance recovery. And 3, don't send a fucking Hail Mary across the stage when you could have just used side air to help you return. Alright, that took a bit longer than I would have liked, but I still want to finish up here with some general advice for gold players. If you're in gold and all you care about is improving, training mode is the absolute best way to do that in my opinion. Now that you understand the game's mechanics and stuff, bro, watch videos on different weapons' true combos. Practice them, try them out in experimental matches. This is literally how I hit Diamond, and I'm not even gonna lie, I loved it. I still think it is so cool and fun to master a weapon so much to the point where you know all of the obscure true combos it has. For instance, recovery into sidelight is a true combo on Scythe. Super specific, but can help out in some situations. Also, these orb wall combos, they come in handy more than you'd think. This shit may seem pointless, but if you know this much about your main weapons and what they can do, trust me, it helps. But enough with the golds here. I think it's about time to move on to the final and longest rank I had to endure before Diamond. Platinum. As you would expect, Platinum was definitely harder than Gold, but it honestly wasn't as bad as I initially thought it would be. Across the 2.5 hour grind it took me to get to Diamond, I actually only lost 2 games. Both of which were bullshit, by the way, but I'll let you be the judge of that in a moment. Still, there were plenty of close games I had at this rank, and it just so happens that the majority of them involved one weapon in specific, so I guess I'll start there. Gauntlets was by far the hardest weapon for me to face in this challenge. Obviously, I had played Gauntlets players before this, but those guys were, for lack of a better term, complete fucking bots. Now that I was in Plat, people were actually somewhat competent with the game, and the true threat of Gauntlets became apparent. You see, people love spamming Gauntlet Sidelight as an approach option. Gauntlet Sidelight leaves the opponent in the air. I can only use this one attack that glues me to the ground. I think y'all can put 2 and 2 together. This may not seem like a big deal, like, I faced a ton of floaty players with no problem, but with how swift this move is, and how quick an opponent can jump out of it if they miss, this was just extremely hard to punish with Sword Endlight. Occasionally if I was in a good spot I could do a GC, but most of the time I just ran away like a bitch until they either gave me an easy punish, or just flat out got rid of their gauntlets. So yeah, I'm sure my opponents had a blast playing against me there, but besides gauntlets, I genuinely don't think there was anything else that stood out to me as a threat. There were, however, a couple things that I did that were very effective at this rank. Mainly, spot dodges and GC wake-ups. Spot dodges are when you dodge in place, which ideally leads to your opponent whiffing, and you getting an easy punish on them. GC wake-ups are very similar, but slightly more advanced. You spot dodge in the air, delay your gravity cancel, opponent whiffs, and then you punish them with a gravity cancel. These techniques are a Plat player's kryptonite. A lot of these players still don't fully have a grasp on punishes. They think they can reach me after I whiff, but all of a sudden, I jump, spot dodge, his ass is caught lacking, and I punish him with a GC. This is something that takes some getting used to, but it is an extremely useful technique, and eventually just becomes second nature. Now, as for how this technique can be countered, just take a chill pill. If you're playing against someone who constantly spams spot dodges or GC wake-ups, which is honestly very common at these ranks, after they whiff, scare them a bit by dashing in or something, they panic dodge, and then you can punish them with a move of your choice. Like I said, these spot dodge spammers are honestly extremely common in Plat and Diamond, so this is a very useful habit to get into. What else do we got? Honestly, the players in Plat here didn't really make that many noticeable mistakes. My wins mostly just came down to having better movement and knowledge of the game, which is kind of boring, but it's also the truth. That doesn't mean there weren't a few highlights here I still want to cover though, so forgive me if the rest of this section is a bit unorganized. Starting with this Wushang. I'm just going to analyze his gameplay because he was a complete dick in the post-lobby chat. First mistake, this guy kept doing dumb GCs. He did a couple offstage that weren't great, but he also did a bunch on stage too. Repeatedly doing risky GCs like this is a horrible idea. You burn your dodge and are left extremely vulnerable if you miss. Second mistake, this guy kept throwing his weapon randomly to try and return back to stage. If you land it, I'm stunned for a 1/10 of a second and I can immediately punish your ass afterwards. If you miss, you're left without a weapon and I can immediately punish your ass afterwards. Look, throwing your weapon can be useful sometimes to interrupt a ground pound or sig or something, but in situations like this, you're not interrupting anything. In fact, you're not doing anything at all. I'm just gonna be able to attack again. And lastly, third mistake, he invited me to a lobby after getting completely clapped. This will never result in making your opponent less happy than you are. It just makes you look like a moron. While I'm on the topic of morons, there were also a few times this rank where I would accidentally hit my opponent with an attack other than Sword Endlight, wait for them to hit me, and they just wouldn't. This was especially prevalent in Plat, and I don't really know why. I don't have any like wise knowledge or anything to impose here, I just thought it was funny. Anyways though, as I approach the end of Plat here, I think now's a good time to finally talk about those 2 losses in this rank, because as I said before, they were complete bullshit. The first one was against this Raine man. Now, no discredit to this guy, he kept it close the whole game. But, I would have whipped his ass if I didn't slip off the map in the exact same way I did previously. No, not again, bro! My other loss was against this Diana, and this one was kind of a blowout. First he killed me instantly with bow, which, by the way, I hate this sig so goddamn much, it's broken as hell. Then he did his stupid bow maneuvers in the second stock and killed me with bow recovery. And then last stock, he killed me with this stupid ass combo that shouldn't be in the game. Well, I don't see how that game was bullshit. Seems like you lost fair and square to me. Yeah, I did lose fair and square, because this guy was 2400. I don't even know how the hell I queued this guy, he was 500 elo above me. Fortunately, due to our enormous elo difference, this game only sent me back 2 elo, and after this, it was back to the usual plat competition. In fact, I was only 3 games away from diamond at this point. So just like with gold, I'll briefly go over each of these matches, finish with some general advice for plats, and soon enough, I'll be in diamond. The first match following my loss to Diana was against this Isaiah player. I think the most obvious thing to point out about this guy was that he was a sig spammer. Bro mashed the hell out of these sigs. But that's not really a bad thing. Once you start approaching diamond, sig spamming is just another playstyle as long as you have the right character. Isaiah is a great example of a character whose sigs have very little end lag, meaning you can jump or dodge out of them fairly quickly if you miss. This combined with the changes in movement many of Isaiah's sigs also provide, made it pretty tricky for me to punish him sometimes. Now, that's not to say that this was a very foolproof strategy, nor that it doesn't make you look like a complete dumbass while you're doing it, but the point I'm trying to get at here is that if you're good enough and you got the right character, sig spamming can genuinely be viable. In fact, it's even ideal for a select few characters. Take Cassidy for instance. Straight up, her hammer end sig is the best sig in the game. There's no question about it. If you look at any tournament gameplay from the past couple years with someone playing Cassidy, they avoid blasters at all costs, they only play hammer, and they spam the hell out of end sig. So yeah, this Isaiah sig spamming strat kept it pretty close, but in the end, I started to figure him out a little bit and came out on top. The next game I played was against a Queen Nai. Upon loading into the match, I kind of assumed this would turn out to be another sig spammer, because that's 90% of Queen Nais, but this guy actually turned out to be pretty good. Not only was he throwing out some pretty advanced moves, like this little wall slide sidelight deal, didn't hit me, but it's not too often you see plats doing this, but also, he just knew what he was doing on the edge and in the air and stuff. This guy was good, and for the first time in a while, I wasn't playing against someone who constantly fed me easy punishes. So, I had to adapt, and I did so by playing extremely passive. Although passive play is generally looked down upon, because, well, this isn't very fun to play against. Hey, if it works, it works. Some people simply struggle to know what to do when someone is keeping their distance, and this guy happened to be one of those people. Eventually, after I had built up a fair lead, I think this guy, like many others before him, started to get a little flustered and responded by sitting on the platform and refusing to leave. I think the idea here was to try and piss me off, you know, give me a taste of my own medicine. But when you confine yourself to a small area like this, it's pretty easy to know where you're gonna be at any given moment, and after a couple minutes of some super exciting gameplay, I eventually pulled through with the dub. The last game here before Diamond was actually against that same Queen Nai. This time he had swapped over to Orion, but by combination of me already understanding his playstyle, and him just being worse at Orion than Queen Nai, this match wasn't nearly as difficult. So, because I already analyzed the other match, I'm just going to use this moment to give some general platinum advice. If you're in this rank and the only thing you care about is improving, the absolute best way to do that is to get your ass back in that training mode. That's right, bro. Training mode again. In Silver, it was about learning the game's raw mechanics. In Gold, it was about practicing important true combos. And in Plat, I think training mode is an excellent tool to practice dodge reads and strings. A dodge read is when you predict where your opponent will dodge to and respond accordingly. A string is a combo that generally can only be escaped by dodging. Dodge reads and strings are essential in Plat, and they go hand in hand. Everybody has dodge habits. It's natural instinct. Some people gravitate towards dodging in, maybe they always dodge down after a specific move. If you can pick up on these things during a match, and you know of a string you can use to punish them, you have an enormous advantage. Obviously, not everyone will enjoy grinding training mode and learning, but hey, I really enjoy that stuff. That's what I did to climb from Gold to Diamond, and in my opinion, I think it is the absolute best way to improve before Diamond. Anyways, after cooking this dude up on his last stock, he was finally out of resources to come back, and in a pretty anticlimactic ending, I had hit Diamond in Brawlhalla using only one move. There we go, man. Challenge complete. I did try to push further beyond Diamond at this point, but after just the second match, my game crashed randomly, I got pissed, and went on to lose 3 games in a row. So I think I'll call it here at 2017. If you guys enjoyed this video, or it helped you out, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it in the comments. This video was a lot of fun to make. I love making videos like this where I push boundaries in games, so if you guys have any other ideas you want to see, let me know. That being said, for all the people here for my usual Minecraft and Terraria videos, I still 100% plan on making more of those. In fact, the next video I drop should be a Minecraft video, so keep a lookout for that. Final comment here, man. I'm sick of dropping videos every 2 months. I want to get more videos out more frequently, so let it be known that my goal right now is a new video every 3 to 4 weeks. So yeah, I think that's about everything. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. Makes everything worth it. And I'll see you all in 3 weeks.